Streaming is king. Well, at least in July, new Nielsen data showing that Americans spent more time streaming than watching cable in July for the first time ever, with streaming capturing nearly 35% of total viewing time. Now, for more on this, we want to bring in Wall Street Journal reporter Sarah Krouse. Sarah, it's good to see you. Wrote about this for the Journal this morning. It's the first time ever that we've seen streaming come out on top on a monthly basis when compared to cable. From your perspective, what's this mean for the future of media and this continued ascent that we're seeing from the streamers?
Yeah, you see this ongoing change. It's been happening and playing out for years. And this is really a sort of pivotal moment. Granted, it's 1 month, but it's the first time that streaming has overtaken cable in terms of the share of American TV time that streaming is capturing. And I think it speaks to the way our habits as viewers have evolved, the way we spend our in-home entertainment time. The muscle memory that we've built is now more on the side of streaming and scrolling through your streaming apps and catalogs to find something to watch than the sort of cable TV dominated, scroll through a channel, or even have that sort of old school appointment viewing type habit where when your favorite show comes on. More people are sort of catching up on shows after the fact or sitting down to binge watch. So it's really a change in the way we digest media.
Are traditional cable companies doing anything to combat this thing that was just not stopping, this trend that appears to just be continuing into the future?
It is. This is a hard tide to change. And as one analyst I talked to, sort of mentioned, once the internet sort of starts to transform your business, it doesn't usually do like a halfway job. Once it starts, it's likely to sort of fully transform it. One of the things that you see cable companies doing is continuing to air sporting events and live events on cable so that it's something that draws in viewers to big events that build a lot of buzz or that people want to do together. And I think that's really like the holdout. That's one of the only reasons that many people still keep their bundle, is that they know that they want to watch their favorite team. But I will say that even in that regard, you see more sporting events, Major League Baseball included, migrating to streaming services. So there's a chipping away of even that.
Sarah, what do you think this tells us more so about content? Because we've been talking about how content is king. It's so important for these streamers to spend more and more. The amounts that they've been spending has been astonishing, and they've really been eye-popping. But I guess this really proves that it's justified. What do you think?
It's a tricky balance. And I think at this earnings season, you started to hear a little bit of a tonal shift. You have streaming companies that have spent an incredible amount of money on content in the last few years. And for a while, it was sort of, at a breakneck pace, and we'll spend whatever it takes because that's the way that we can win. And you started to hear more discipline, more we need to be smart and make sure that we're getting a return on our investment, that we can't just write blank checks. And a thing to keep in mind is that in the US, it's a pretty saturated market. A lot of people already have streaming services. More customers are getting savvy about sort of what they turn on and off if they aren't watching something or when they finish watching. So there's a really intense competitive market, and it's a tough balance because you do have to be the streaming service that has the most compelling content if you're going to retain subscribers long term. At the same time, you have to be sure that you're not just throwing money and making all sorts of things that don't resonate. You have to make sure that you're picking winners so that you actually get a return on investment in terms of subscriber attraction and retention and sort of added viewing time per household long term that makes them more likely to stick around.
Yeah, an interesting trend you mentioned there, Sarah, that you also wrote about is how many in particular young people are signing up and canceling those subscriptions as soon as they are done with a particular series, maybe Stranger Things, the most popular series. What are the streamers doing to combat that trend? Are they doing something to hold on to the consumer or spread out the series?
You've seen a little bit of a move in that direction. So Netflix, for one, Stranger Things is a great example. In the past, they've released an entire new season in one bout. And with this this most recent season of Stranger Things, they split it into two. And so the first batch happened in May, and then the second set happened in July. And that really helps retain subscribers over several months. Now, Netflix has said that it still wants to, sort of encourage binging and will not abandon that model. But I think that choice with a really high profile show that has a lot of like brand affiliation with Netflix is one that sort of speaks to the moment where you see them sort of trying ways to keep subscribers over more months. And really, like, consumers of streaming services have gotten a lot savvier about managing their subscriptions. And you start to see this moment where the flexibility that gave streaming an edge over cable is now starting to become a bit of a pain point for these streaming companies because it is easy to turn services on and off and cycle through them.
Sarah, we've been talking a lot about saturation in this space for months. We had Laura Martin from Needham on the show not too long ago, and she was talking about likely consolidation in this space. She only sees it coming down to about 3 or 4 winners in the streaming space. What's your view just on the likelihood that we will see some consolidation?
I think there's a great possibility of that longer term. It sounds now that many of these streaming services are trying to rationalize, what do I spend on content? What does my long-term profitability look like? And you see more of them exploring new distribution partnerships. And so I think that's probably the next stage that we're going to see, is some of these services being more open to appearing in marketplaces where maybe they weren't before. So the Amazon Prime Video, you can subscribe to other services through it. We reported last week that YouTube is working on its own marketplace where you could subscribe through YouTube to other streaming services. And so I think you see this moment where services that maybe had been resistant to selling their app in other places versus attracting consumers directly to their app are now warming up to the idea that maybe it's better to be in more places where you can reach customers that maybe you couldn't reach on your own or within your existing marketing spend.
Netflix still king. Who's coming up the fastest in their rearview mirror in terms of growth?
You know, it's interesting. Netflix definitely still holds and has held for several months the greatest share of Americans' streaming time. But an interesting one to keep in mind is also YouTube. YouTube has fairly consistently sort of been just next to Netflix in terms of the share of TV time that it is capturing. And you've seen Nielsen, this is, from a smaller base, but you've also seen HBO Max, really increase its share over time. It wasn't something that was even broken out by Nielsen previously, and in the last couple of months, it's reached the 1% threshold. And so, you start to see the reason why there is such fierce competition is you have a newer crop of services, HBO Max included, Peacock, that are gaining ground and that are drawing new eyeballs. And that becomes a pain point for a stalwart like Netflix.
Probably an obvious answer. Do you still have cable TV?
I do not.
You do not? Nope, me neither. All right, Sarah Krouse, excellent stuff. Wall Street Journal, appreciate you.